I'm back! I'm back doing video reviews, guys. I'm the friendly film fan, Jacob Jones. This is the first review in a series of video reviews that I am doing for the X-Men franchise. I'll be reviewing every X-Men movie until X-Men Apocalypse releases on May 27th. So let's begin with X-Men. One of my favorite superhero movies, not like up there, but it's pretty close. It'd be kind of on par with like the first Spider-Man. And really, it kind of is on par with the first Spider-Man because those two movies really started this whole comic book movie craze that's going on today. And we had movies like Batman and Batman Returns and Superman the movie and, you know, some little things up to that point, but we never really had anything that worked on a blockbuster scale, aside from like maybe the first two Batman movies and the first two Superman movies, because everything just started falling apart after a while. We never had anywhere to go with a lot of those franchises. Anyway, this review is going to be spoiler-filled because this movie's been out since 2000, and if you haven't seen it yet, that's on you. So, X-Men begins. We have this little opening monologue that Xavier does about evolution, and how every few hundred millennia evolution leaps forward, and boom, there we are, right in our title sequence. And that's one of the things that X-Men, the franchise, has always done pretty well. It's had really cool opening title sequences. After the title sequence is done, we see, you know, the Cerebro room, and then we go through the Eye of Cerebro, and we get to see a little bit of the past of Eric Lenscher, and him in the Holocaust, and getting separated from his mom, and going through this struggle, and we get to see him use his powers on the gate. We get a little bit of an introduction into Rogue, and seeing her use her powers and get, like, all freaked out. Then we get to see a bit of what X-Men, or the X-Men, are really dealing with at this point, which is this geopolitical scale of are mutants good or bad, and what does what they can do constitute as, like, how much surveillance government can put on them, or do they have to, like, register as human beings or as mutants? You know, stuff that really hasn't been a massive presence in comic book movies before, but now all of a sudden is brought to kind of the forefront of them. And, you know, this is almost where the basis for, like, stories like Batman v Superman or Civil War or something, stuff that's been in comic books for a long time but hasn't really been brought to comic book film. Well, this is where it kind of all started, I think. I don't know. I haven't seen many superhero movies before this besides the Batman and Superman movies. So we now get to the introduction of our protagonist, which is Logan, aka Wolverine. Rogue goes to this bar in Laughlin City, Canada, because she's running away from home after she kind of revealed her powers and freaked herself out. She meets Logan, and the introduction to Logan is one of my favorite introductions to an X-Men character, like, ever. We get to see him in a cage fight. We get to see him use his claws against these two people at a bar. And then Rogue tries to hitch a ride with him. First, he's like, I saved your life. No, you didn't. And he just drives off, and then he stops because he's like, well, where's she gonna go? I mean, she's out in the cold, I can't just leave her here. So she rides with him, and they get attacked by Sabretooth, who is pretty underdeveloped in this movie. I would have really liked to have had him be a much more complex character. Of course, you can't exactly have a ton of complex characters, you know, all up in this movie, because there's a lot of characters in here that you have to balance. But most of what he does is just like one-liners, like, with them, and he, like, roars. Doesn't do a whole lot. That's one thing about this movie that I didn't particularly enjoy a lot, is not a lot of the villains besides Magneto are very fleshed out. You don't get to see a whole lot of what they have gone through, or, like, you don't get to see a whole lot of character moments with them. This story, really, though, is about Logan and Rogue, and that's where the movie finds its real strength, is that it's a self-contained story about friendship and about, you know, like, discovering who you are and being okay with that. Storm and Cyclops rescue Logan and Rogue, and they take them to the mansion, and, you know, there's all this banter with Scott and Logan, which is really cool, and he flirts with Jean Grey, and, you know, you see Rogue getting to kind of learn at the school as Charles is teaching Logan, and, you know, it's a really cool sort of thing, montage that they do. There's this nightmare that Logan has, and he ends up waking up from it and stabbing Rogue directly through the chest. And so Rogue takes his powers and heals herself. It freaks a lot of people out, and so Bobby, aka Mystique at this point, comes up to her and tells her, like, oh, I think you should leave. So she runs off. It ends up that was Mystique, and Bobby has no idea where she is. So they find her, and there's this kind of cool scene at the train station where she is running away, and Logan goes to find her using Scott's motorcycle, of course, and Magneto is coming out of the train station with her after having taken her from Logan because he can control metal, so he just kind of flings Logan against the back of the train car and knocks him out. Anyway, he takes her, and he's there with Toad and Sabretooth, and Mystique is driving this helicopter down to where they are. Mystique is also one of the coolest characters in this movie because I had no idea who that was before this movie happened. And, oh my goodness, did I get an introduction. He takes her out of the train station, and you see Charles kind of testing his power on Magneto, and like Sabretooth starts choking him. He's like, let her go, or let them go, because the cops are all outside the train station. So Magneto points their guns at them, and Charles is just like, let them go. And he's like, you're still unwilling to make sacrifices, Charles. And he shoots one of the guys, and Jean and Charles are there together, and they both have to keep Magneto in check and get the bullet out of this dude's head. So they end up letting Eric go because they're just like, look, it's not worth it. We can't stop him and stop this bullet at the same time. He takes Rogue because he wants to use her to power this machine that is going to turn all of humankind into mutants, but first he's going to test it out on Ellis Island using the Statue of Liberty. So he puts Rogue in this machine and raises it up towards the torch of the Statue of Liberty. And this is where the film really kind of gets into the stride of its X-Men vibe, because you see Mystique sneak into Cerebro and poison it. So Charles's mind gets poisoned the next time he tries to find Rogue. So he goes into a coma. So they have to, as a team, go out and find Rogue. They have to go and get her. And this is a really personal thing for Logan because he's traveled with her all this way, and he went and got her on the train, and he gave her a ride. And they've kind of been in this together. They got taken into this school together. So he is going, after her. You can tell it's not just part of, like, him, like, being part of the team, because he's not part of the team at this point. He is going after her because he's getting his friend back. And that's what this movie does so well, is it's a story of friendship between Logan and Marie. It's so self-contained, and it feels very personal to Wolverine's character. And it feels personal to the viewer, like, yeah, go and get her back. So they go, and there's this cool sequence where they enter the Statue of Liberty, and they go through the metal detectors, and it, like, sets off when Wolverine goes through it, and he just stabs the lights and gives the bird to Cyclops, because obviously Jean is dating Scott, and Logan is flirting with her and everything. Those two, they're not exactly pals to begin with. One of those, like, moments of physical comedy that is just kind of funny. They keep going, and it ends up Mystique is in that torch. And so she fights Wolverine with herself as Wolverine. And this leads into one of the coolest moments, probably the coolest moment in the entire movie for me, is Storm comes up after fighting Toad and says, like, Logan, we need to regroup. And he just goes, I know, but there's a problem. And he stabs Storm right through the stomach. He's like, you're not part of the group. And it ends up it's Mystique. When I first saw that, I was, like, shocked. I was like, ugh. Did the evil one get the good one? And then I saw the blue form of Mystique, and I was like, oh, okay. That's just one of the coolest moments in the entire movie for me. Anyway, so they go up into the, kind of towards the torch of the Statue of Liberty, and Logan's like, everyone get out of here. And they're like, why? He's like, I can't move. And he gets bolted against the wall, and, like, his claws are, like, pointing towards his chest, so you know if he uses his claws, he's going to kill himself. And Magneto takes, or Sabretooth really, hands Magneto Scott's little vision goggle thing, so that he can't open his eyes, because if he opens his eyes, he's going to blast Jean right in the face. Storm is, also held there. There's this one line that Ian McKellen says where Cyclops is like, "Storm, fry him," and Ian McKellen is like, "Oh yes, a bolt of lightning into a huge copper conductor. I thought you went to a school." Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, and Hugh Jackman are the three most perfect comic book castings maybe ever put to film besides J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Wow. Perfect casting. So, Logan, of course, being just the absolute coolest character in this movie, stabs himself, knows he's going to heal because of his regenerative healing, and falls to the ground. Boom. Done. Sabretooth comes up to investigate, and he starts fighting Sabretooth. And this is a really cool fight because you get to kind of see how effective Logan's claws actually are. He takes him out, and Sabretooth at one point throws him towards one of the points of the crown on the Statue of Liberty. I guess they're in the Statue of Liberty's head, maybe. And he comes around and he cuts off that ending part of the crown. What I'm really questioning is why does nobody see this on Ellis Island? Why does nobody see this happening? Because this is a pretty big fight and they're right next to it. But it's a plot point the movie never really divulges. We get to see this fight, and what actually happens is he gets Sabretooth back into this little place that they all are, this copper conductor thing. Logan's like, "Hey, looking for this?" And Jean controls the little vision goggle and puts it around Sky. He's like, "Open your eyes when I tell you, now." And you see the laser kind of divert into the goggle, and it hits Sabretooth, and he goes flying, he's dead. They end up stopping the machine, and they rescue Rogue, and Logan, he's holding, and she has her little white stripe of hair, and he's just like, "No, no, no." So he puts his hand on her and holds his face to hers, and you can see all of his scars and everything just come out of his body. It's so cool to see. And he gives his life force to her. So you can tell that he really, really cares about her. And that's why this movie works so well. It's a self-contained story of friendship between Logan and Marie. And it's on that level. It reaches a height. You can tell it's just kind of an introduction to the X-Men universe, but it works that way, and it works very well. I'm going to give X-Men an 8.3 out of 10. Now, I know that might not be appropriate for the time it came out in. It might be a 10 out of 10 or whatever, but for modern days, the visual effects do look a little dated, and there are some moments that just don't really hit as well. Anyway, that's my review of X-Men. Now, I will review X-Men 2 very, very soon, but thank you for sticking with me for this one. You guys are the best, and I will see you next time.